tethered, locked down.
Policy. You know what I mean? They would fit your
Or no.
Hey, the only thing I'm gonna mention
away.
is the treasure.
Glad I didn't wear my green tie today.
Thank you.
Is
So it's close.
Thank you.
We would have looked like twins again.
two fronts.
Sorry.
Somewhat surprised at the Zoom meeting that PFAS, the byproduct of septic.
Yeah, I thought that was a kind of an overstatement, but it sounded like Mike Jury from Eagle was a little bit upset about how that was portrayed. Because a lot of the areas that were showing hot well tests, they don't have septic, they have city sewer. That was kind of an oversight to say, you know, when we have certain neighborhoods that are in areas of interest.
Meeting is streamed live, Jesse.
Oh.
It's just wide view, it's streamed.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah, it's fine.
Mary does not, but Marathon does, and Division does.
Sewer in and not water at the same time.
Yeah, I think I heard a number that 70% of the hot wells have city sewer from the areas of interest.
So this is,
Exact specifics, but I know with working with Eagle, some of them were very upset with that. It was almost like it was a canned message, which is unfortunate because I think we have a lot of other things.
we gotta get a sample
Yeah.
point going, we gotta get up and move, we gotta move forward, that's my message for today.
Mike,
I can just shrink this right
I'm Mike Solomon.
Us on the planning update too.
It's been a while, but.
I see your name.
Nice to meet you again.
I don't think.
So like super
Caitlin's here. This, so yeah, I offered him up, I said, I don't do this. Good.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
It grows every time. We're asked to be locked down.
We haven't had this kind of attendance in a bit.
You can say ever.
Alrighty, sir. I'm sure in the Pete Stocker days.
Pictures of you at Roger City still. Actually, it wouldn't be from Roger City people though.
It's just under
they're-
your
they're-
direction.
they want the
that
issue.
everybody's coming.
They're from Chicago.
I don't think it has
Yeah.
anything to do with these. I'm thankful though, because I do have nightmares that you show up here and you have 5.
You know that?
Yeah, that
We
was
have
not
to
a good
reconvene.
situation.
Just our plan, not the issue in general.
You know.
Just to get, try to get the board.
That's what, that's what,
I just figured.
See where Tom, did you get the report, Tom? He was Wolverine CEO before Eric.
Through this conversation.
Baker and I don't know any of the previous folks.
But yeah, that's where we're at.
Well, I know in the old, this city's picture. Cracked up one day with pictures of past presidents.
Right. We got a lot of stuff going on in our packet, don't we?
Yeah.
Pretty amazing guy.
Good.
Well, it's great to hear.
Yeah, I wouldn't have printed the whole thing if I'd known I was gonna have it.
Right.
Love to be a part of a solution, but I don't want to sit in a problem forever with them. Yeah. I can appreciate that.
You got your CPA license yet, Bill?
Well, I'm trying to avoid DUIs at this point.
You too? You too?
Yeah, before I work my way to something creditable.
That's hilarious.
That's my only value, Matt. See, my only value.
Now, that is true transparency. I really appreciate that.
I do wanna ask Colin a couple things.
We're ready when you guys are.
Alrighty.
I'm gonna have to go off this page.
Yes.
All right, let's start this meeting with roll call. Caitlin, if you could help us with that.
Yep. Schichtel,
Here?
Warner,
Here.
Tenza,
Here.
Diebold, Brown,
Here.
Hamner,
Here.
Solomon,
Here.
Pesha,
Here.
Kearney, Stark.
Here.
All right, thank you, Caitlin. It's good to see such good attendance. Next is approval of the agenda. Do I have some support?
We'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support?
Schichtel,
Yes?
Warner,
Yes.
Tenza,
Yes.
Theobald,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Hamner,
Yes.
Solomon,
Yes.
Pesha,
Yes.
Kearney, Stark.
Yes.
Okay. Third on the agenda, approval of minutes of January 15th, 2025, and approval of minutes of February 10th, 2025. And if I may, if we can just have support to approve both of those at once?
So moved.
Support.
Warner,
Yes.
Tenza,
Yes.
Theobald,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Hamner,
Yes.
Solomon,
Yes.
Pesha,
Yes.
Kearney, Stark.
Yes.
I'd like to just comment that I thought the minutes, especially of our February 10th meeting, were very good, very complete. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Excellent stuff. Next up on the agenda, number 4 is public comments. This is a session with no open dialogue. You may address the board with your comments, and each person has 3 minutes.
Good morning, I guess still. Brad Marine. I'll sign in here in a minute. One of the things I don't know if you've considered, and I was just seeing on Cadillac for Clean Water Advocates, they've got some wells, or not wells, but filter systems for wells. There's, I think, $1.2 million in your fund when I looked at your financials. Is there any way that you can pursue using that money to purchase these filter systems for people that need them? Just something to consider. Then I've got a couple questions. I know you can't answer them, but I was on the webpage for the LDFA last night, and I noticed it said the Board of Authority meets as necessary as determined by the chairperson. Well, you also have a link to the bylaws on there, and the bylaws state that you'll meet once a month. So I'm just curious how that, or why that information is on the city website. And also on that website, it talks about Act 57 of 2018, and you'll hold 2 annual informational meetings, And I looked, and I cannot find any documentation of any informational meetings. There's no minutes, there's nothing. So, you know, there's a couple issues there. Obviously, there's some, what I would call misinformation on your webpage. There's also some potential violations of Act 57, 2018. I would encourage you to take a look at that. And I also wonder about the development plan. I know there was at some point a decision made without public input regarding PFAS, and I'm glad to see Mr. Hamner's here. So when I look at the development plan that this board is supposed to be following back in the day, it doesn't identify specific chemicals. It talks about a treatment facility, a water treatment facility. So I'm curious in how the determination was made that PFAS was not covered in that responsibility, and that there was a legal action or a legal letter written to push back. I think Mr. Hamner supported that. And that's interesting. I see your sweatshirt on Avon. There's some interesting PFAS tests at Avon in 2018. So that's it. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Anybody else? Okay. Next on the agenda is the committee's response to public comments. And I can start. As far as putting money towards testing, Mr. Marine, I'm a firm believer that we should look at, you know, not just well testing and well filters, but also blood testing, trauma counseling, health studies. There's all kinds of things, and I think over time, I think our plate's kind of full right now with what we got going on. But I will be an advocate for that on the board. I don't know. I'm not one that probably can convince the entire board of that thought. But I think it's something that I will not forget, and I will put it on our open actions. I will not forget you, sir. As far as questions about why we don't have meetings once per month, I do know that we currently have meetings once per month since I've been involved since November. I've only been the chair for 2 meetings, so I guess I would respectfully put those questions to either Jeff or to Marcus on why we didn't have monthly meetings.
Well, I'll just jump in. The LDFA historically met when they had items to adjudicate on and discuss. The informational meetings as required by Act were actually a part of the actual regular meeting agendas. I couldn't tell you, as I'm sitting here today, which meetings over the years those informational meetings were actually on, but I know that we've had that as an agenda item in the past for the board, and our utilities director would then go through a full, essentially, history of how the LDFA started, what its purpose is, and essentially, a status update in regard to the cleanup and where things are at as a part of that meeting, as well as, have opportunity for public to, to make comment. So, I don't know if that's addressing everything that maybe the board wants to know, but that's all I've got this morning.
Okay, appreciate your thoughts. I know on that note, I can add that looking at the 11 meeting minutes that are on the website, that in 2024, we did have a section 1 informational meeting, or there was a small section in there in April of 2024, but unfortunately we didn't have quorum. I do know in 2023 in September, we had a small section of 1 informational meeting, but again, we did not have quorum. I do know in 2022, we did not have any informational meetings. And I know in 2021, we had, again, 1 informational meeting. It was a very small section in October, but again, there was no quorum. In 2020, we had no informational meetings per the 11 that are available. And in 2019, we also had no informational meetings. So that's something that we need to work on.
Matt, just for point of reference, I liked the accountability monthly that you had put out. Do you have to have a quorum to have an informational meeting? Because I know for like a school board, you don't. You only have to have a quorum when you have action items and vote.
I don't
So
know.
I just would like clarification on that accountability count, because like an informational meeting doesn't really, in my mind, require quorum.
It
So-
doesn't state in the meeting minutes that it's an overall informational meeting with no
Right.
business and no voting. It just has a small section within the agenda that says
Right.
informational meeting.
So for the school board, when we have requirements for informational meeting in public, just to share information, a board meeting does qualify as an informational meeting. You have to have quorum to vote action. And I don't know what would be the rules for this, but I would want that clarification to be added to the accountability calendar.
And that makes
calendar.
sense. I mean, we do have other issues where we don't have quorum, but if that's the case,
Yeah.
that would excuse those situations.
Sure,
So,
And I
Fair
think
enough,
that's pretty
fair
well tied to the Open Meetings Act.
yeah, it is.
Right, that is true.
Yeah.
Does anybody else on the board have any comments for Mr. Marine before we move on?
I do, regarding the list of pollutants that are on, that we're responsible for. Pretty, Mr. Marine, there's pretty clear, a couple pretty clear places, the record of decision lists the VOCs and the hexavalent chromium, and that's been in place for 20, 30 years. And the other place to look is the NPDES permit that the city manages, that's connected to the treatment system on 6th Street. So there's there's very well-defined list of contaminants that we're responsible for. And as recently, EPA asked us to look at PFAS. And we're working through that issue. And Jeff, I believe, the first phase of working through that is collection of data. And I think EPA is asking us to get a data collection system for PFAS that's in draft form, but correct me if I'm wrong, but they've asked for a number of wells to be tested for PFAS.
Correct.
And this is just my personal opinion. This isn't the consensus necessarily of the board, but we need to work with EPA, and I believe there's broad support on doing that. Exactly what that will look like. Will that lead to treatment? Will we spend dollars? on PFAS management. I am very, very, in my view, we need to collaborate with EPA, test, communicate that risk. But this is, the source of the PFAS is unknown, and maybe that will be solved here in the next few months. But it's considered an orphan pollutant. It's an emerging pollutant, and I do not believe the LDFA has a responsibility to pay for the management, pay for the cleanup, or the members that are part of the LDFA assessment, or the greater community. And that's why, good people, are volunteering their time above and beyond their service to the LDFA, like my friend Matt, my friend Marcus, my friend Bill, and my friend Julie. We are working towards a grant funding plan to help pay for any issues related to PFAS, and that's a long story that I'm going to take time to, I'm going to set that aside. But this is a significant concern for all of us, and it's an emerging pollutant, and emerging pollutants are common with Superfund sites, and it's challenging for the participants in a Superfund to work through emerging pollutants, but we are, and this whole board is committed to that. Exactly how we go about doing that, that's part of our mission, and it's an important part of the public comment too. And this is something we're listening to regularly, listening to how we should address this from the community. This isn't just our talents and time. This is something that everybody is encouraged to be involved with, especially the grant funding process. We need help writing letters of support, engaging state leaders to help get the resources to get clean water to the citizens.
All right, thanks for that explanation. Real quick, just looking at the website, whether we have quorum or not for informational meetings, Mr. Marine, it does state in our website that we do have 2 informational meetings per year, and it does look like for the last 6 years we've only had one. If you want to call that little section a meeting, we've only had one. So we've got some improvement to do there. So that's all I have to say there. Next up is a review of old action items, section 6. First up is further disclosure of adding additional LDFA meeting minutes to the website per Open Meetings Act statutory requirements, and I'm going to turn that over to Jeff.
As the board knows, yesterday we added, I don't know how many minutes we found. We went through our old records, found paper minutes, made PDF copies of the paper minutes, and put them on the website. These are a lot of these are the ones that were, I can't get my computer to read the files. They say there's a coding error in it. We're still trying to do that, but those were the minutes. I see a lot of them when you read them. They were having 1 to 2 meetings a year back before I was involved, and the meetings referenced the minutes from the previous meeting. So this was a practice back to 2000 that they were meeting as needed. So I don't know. As I find more records, I'm going through the paper records. If I can find one, maybe they changed the bylaws early on. I don't know, but I added a whole bunch to satisfy that, and we're still working on them, trying to find paper records or trying to get the corrupted files or the encoded files that we can't read to be read, and then we'll place those on as soon as we can. So I guess that's the update.
Okay. Just to provide a little history about Open Meetings Act, it was made effective on March 31st of 1977. Since 1990, when we started the LDFA, if we would have monthly meetings, there should be 410 meeting minutes available. I believe we have 23 now. The 11 that are the most recent, 5 of them are 2024, 1 meeting from 2023, 0 from 2022, 4 from 2021, and 0 from 2020, and 1 from 2019. So the additional 12, I'm very thankful for that. It's from 1998 to 2008. They're between 16 and 26 years old. So none of us really served during that time period. I guess my concern is that 6 of the 11 meetings don't have quorum, so now we have to start looking at, okay, the old business, was it official business, and do we need to redo something? We need to get the attorney's opinion on that. We have to look at those meeting minutes sometime in the next month and make that decision. My goal would be as the longest standing member of this board from a liability standpoint for the Open Meetings Act, so we don't get fined $1,000 a meeting, is who is the longest standing board member that's up here today? And if that's 7 or 8 years, or if somebody can help me out with that, who is the longest standing board member?
Probably me at this
Okay,
point.
how many years would that be, Marcus?
When I started in 2009, I was put on the board.
So for 15 years, at a bare minimum, and I'm not necessarily so concerned back to 1990, to protect the board and to protect the liability of each person I care about out here, it's really, it's important to get those meetings on there. And I think my concern is that the first meeting that I came here in November, 5 months ago, I asked for these documents, and here we are 5 months later, and we have 11 relevant documents online. The other 12 were back when Pete Stalker was involved. I mean, there's really no public inspection that's necessary for Mr. Stalker, who no longer lives in the area. So I just need a little bit more urgency. If they don't exist, or we didn't have a meeting, I would just kindly ask that you put on the website that we didn't have a meeting. If we did have a meeting, I think it's very easy to access those documents. The long-standing members that are here today had monthly emails that had the agendas for the meetings, that had the meeting minutes that was distributed to them that they should be approving. There's got to be emails out there from someone on the board to easily get those documents out there for public inspection. My goal is to not sit up here month after month and try to be an advocate for accountability. It's not in my behavior to ask this stuff, but I think if we're going to run these meetings the way they're supposed to be run, we need a little more urgency. So that's all I'm asking.
Just to comment on that, Pete Stalker is still local.
Well, that's good.
And then
There's where I went wrong.
and some of the minutes that were put out there, they were approving minutes from 16, 17 months ago for the prior meeting.
Okay.
So there was, this monthly meeting thing, I think I can't remember how long I've been on the board, maybe 5, 6, 7 years.
In the bylaws.
It's never, yeah, I'm not disputing that, but since 1994, 1998, there's been some documentation that says approved meeting minutes from July 97, and this was a meeting that was being held in September 98. So I mean, there's, and I'm just quoting dates, but it's along those lines. So I think it has typically, as long as I can remember, it's been like an annual type of meeting. But
So
it
that's
doesn't
our
make it right or wrong, but
Right.
that's
So that's where we need
historic.
to improve.
Mr. Chairman, we're good now, right?
I think we're good now. I'm trying to understand what's happened in the last 5 or 10 years. And it's impossible for me or anyone on the board or for anyone in the public to truly understand what's happened the last 5 or 10 years when those documents are not available. This isn't a personal vendetta that I have against anyone. I need the information for the public and for the board so we can understand what we did right, what we did wrong, and how we can do better. And it's pretty simple. There's emails out there to the board members for the last 10 years. So I think we can resolve this. I'm just asking for a little bit of more attention on it.
Marcus, did the bylaws always require monthly meetings, historic bylaws?
Honestly, I don't know, Mr. Solomon. In fact, as I had mentioned several months ago, the bylaws themselves were something that we discovered, what was it, maybe 3 months ago, Julie? 4 months?
August.
Yeah, August. So,
The
you know, and as our utilities director commented, it's possible that, Mr. Chair, it's really not appropriate for members of the public to be addressing the board during
yes.
board
Yes.
conversation.
Thank you,
Um,
Mr. Marine.
The minutes that our utilities director found, some of them which were just simply handwritten, going back over 20 years ago, we ourselves need to review those. It's possible that the bylaws may have been amended or changed during the last 25 years. I don't know. I just can't tell you. So,
Okay.
if I knew, I would tell everybody. So.
And I do know the bylaws have been in place since the 90s because it was signed off on the bottom by the entire board, and it has the date. And I think that's why we have the checklist, so that we can learn from this and move on. So I appreciate your feedback on that.
Yeah.
Next up is audit report, adding to meeting packet concerning documentation of statutory 50% assessment criteria. Owen, do you have an update on that, sir?
So I just want to make sure, and I have talked with the city attorney on this. So the 50% requirement, basically, there was the information out there that all of the treatment costs had to be covered 50% or more by an assessment.
The operational cost.
The operational cost of the groundwater treatment facility. And I will say that was true for a time. So that 50% requirement is in the act, in the amended act from 2018, section 125.4402, subsection S. All it is a definition. So when the LDFA was established, my assumption is that probably a power generating facility was not eligible for capture. So part of being able to establish this process was that was put into the definitions of eligible property, and it was very narrowly written. If an authority approved a TIF plan, between January and May of 1991, and it had a power generating facility in it, and that there also in that district there was a groundwater treatment plant where 50% or more of the costs of the cleanup or the operations were covered through an assessment, then that power generating facility would be eligible for capture by the LDFA authority. The other caveat to that within that act is tax increment finance, tax increment revenues captured from this eligible property, this specific power generating facility, will be used to finance or will be pledged for debt service on tax increment bonds used to finance a public facility in or near the authority district designed to reduce, eliminate, or prevent the spread of identified soil and groundwater contamination. So that's the section. It was a definition. It made the power plant eligible for the taxes to be captured only while used to pay for tax increment financing debt. So that debt was paid off 2000, did I tell you 2005, between 2005 and 2007 somewhere, that debt was paid off. And once that debt was paid off, the debt that was taken out to finance the original construction of the facility and the system, the capture on the power generating facility ceased. So because then we weren't capturing on that power generating facility, then that 50% requirement became not something that was relevant. Now that's the information. So theoretically, if bonds were issued again and you wanted to do the same thing, you would probably have to go and make sure that requirement for that time was being met. So
Could you summarize that to us, Owen, in like an email?
I can try. I actually asked the attorneys to write a letter
that-
that basically
that's even
affirms
better.
the position.
So we still need to be, as an LDFA board, very mindful of the dollars that we spend and where we have to be careful where they're procured through the right sources. But for example, say if the TIF revenues that we receive specifically assigned for the operation of the LDFA, if that was adequate, we would not have to necessarily, if we chose, not to worry about a 50% funding from assessments. We could fund the operation of the LDFA unless we went out and bonded for new capital solely from the TIF fund. And I know the TIF fund doesn't cover all the operations, but just as a theoretical.
Yeah, right now it's the only source of revenues. So, but yeah, that's the answer on the 50% thing. That was just in a definition of an eligible property where taxes are no longer being captured and haven't been since, again, 2005, 2006
It was
is
a
when the
state-
debt was paid off.
You know, it was a state statute.
Yeah, it was really narrowly and specifically written for this
But-
authority.
Good, it's good to comply with state statutes.
Yep.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up question on money and dollars. You know, and do you want to address this in the treasurer's report, Mr. Tenza? The $400,000 fund that we have in, for the groundwater, for the,
Yeah, I've not received an answer back on that particular question.
Okay.
Just to get that out there. Yep.
that's worth tracking, isn't it? Marcus?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Owen.
Thanks.
Next, review of old action item is the status of carbon filter disposal process and the update on contacting supplier for process understanding. Mr. Dietland?
Yep, I actually have a conference call with them this afternoon on this. They changed salesman or whoever represents our area, and the old guy contacted me and then left, and now I've got a new contact. So that person is meeting with me today, and I'll have an update next meeting more on that one. It is definitely a rough go to get a hold of somebody there. I think we did just switch filters, so we have time. This is not a time-sensitive thing yet, but I would like to get that carbon replaced and have a backup as soon as we can. So if we ever do start seeing a breakthrough of the contaminants, that we'd have a backup filter to put back on place. But since we just changed filters, we've got time. So
we're holding on to the changed filters for now. But do we have filters that were changed out and sent to this company from
again,
years ago?
We have carbon that was changed out. Our vessels are permanently installed. So they've come in with carbon in a big
Okay.
tanker truck, and they'll vacuum out the old carbon and they'll put new
Okay.
carbon in. And that company does have carbon that we have taken to them and have regenerated, or it's supposed to be regenerated at their facilities. Now, as you had mentioned, Brian, with the PFAS, I don't know, this was pre-PFAS, so I don't know what their process is now, so.
I mean, I apologize, Jeff. I mean,
Yep.
I think you've corrected me about at least twice on carbon material. I apologize.
That's fine.
But I would, here's my ask. And normally, hearkening back to my environmental days, if I sent something out the door, I got a nice piece of paper that says, you're good, this has been properly disposed, no liability, we should get something back from.
When we do that, yes. The old ones, obviously, though I was looking through my files, we had the SVE sites, we have those hazmat and all that stuff for those, and then we also had it for the one carbon exchange that we have done out there, or multiple carbon exchange. I don't know how many at the plant itself. So we do have those documentations for the past exchanges.
Oh, from
But-
the one 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We got
okay.
all that stuff, yeah.
All right.
But we don't have any for, obviously, our current one because we
No,
haven't done anything with it
But
yet.
that was the heart of my question. What,
Oh, yeah, we
what
got
do
those.
So then that issue, Mr. Chairman, I'll like to take that off the agenda. It's been addressed. Thank
Yeah,
you.
before we do that, I have one follow-up question. What's our preventative maintenance program for a carbon changeout or a carbon vacuum? What is the maximum gallons that can go through the carbon before you do a changeout?
I don't think it's by gallons, it's by contamination. It'd be how much contamination could come through the carbon before we'd have to change it out. And believe it or not, it's more of a testing that if there's a breakthrough of the carbon is when you would change it out. It's not a gallon thing. So if we had something that was at 100, obviously that'd eat up a lot more carbon than something at a 10. And our numbers have been falling. You'll see in my report later on, our numbers have been falling steadily for forever. So, yeah, there's no set. It's just testing would be the preventative maintenance.
I appreciate that because the last time we did a changeout was 2009, and that's 15 years. So if you look at 91 gallons per minute, that's 718 million gallons that went through that carbon before you changed it out last year.
Yep.
So that's a lot of gallons. So that's the reason I'm asking that.
Yeah, and we, again, no NPDS permit violations, no, everything was, everything we have to report to the feds and the state was well within compliance. So I have no doubt that if the carbon got played out, what was coming through after that did not affect our treatment at all, because we were well below all of our criteria for discharge. So,
Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
What's the frequency of testing for the carbon?
now it's quarterly. It used to be monthly, but the EPA has dropped that back down to quarterly, or the state of Michigan on our NPDS permit has dropped that down.
Thank you.
So,
Okay, next up is update on well flow project S1 and S2 added to the I-5 carbon filter. Jeff?
yeah, as you guys know, Catherine was out in the lovely California fighting the wildfires, and she's back now. I owe her I think I owe her a diagram of what we're actually going to do, and then we can start moving forward. EPA will make comments on that and come back. Again, this is one that I owe her a little bit of work, but we'll get there. I can't, I can only do so many things in a day. So this is one that is on my plate. I want to get done. I think it's easy to do, but I owe her a diagram, and then she'll comment, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Section E, update on environmental optimization services, review of the 7 proposed bids. And we did have a meeting or two on this. I'm sorry, a discussion, not actually an open meeting, with Brian and Julie and myself. And then Jeff was involved also. And you have an update on that, Brian?
Yes, we received 7 bids, and I believe that that the rest of the board has seen a summary of those bids. And as a committee, we have a consultant recommendation. Mr. Chair, do you want to go into the evaluation and selection now, or is that a later item in the agenda?
I think. Do we have it on the agenda?
I don't see it.
I don't think so. If you want to give us a quick review of your top 3 for the.
If I may just also chime in really quick.
Yes, sir.
I think as Brian had mentioned, everybody on the board received the full packet of information, as well as the prioritization of consultants. And if the board is comfortable after this upcoming discussion, I think we probably could consider a motion to award it to the number 1 recommended bidder this morning, and then continue to just move things forward. So
That was one of the options that we had discussed. Brian, do you want to talk about why you feel about Geosyntec real quick, and then maybe provide a motion?
Well, sure. Of the 7 proposals, there were a few proposals that were clear that the consultants had a depth of knowledge of PFAS. Not that that's the only concern by far, and especially in the optimization services. They do have experience with City Cadillac system. Mike Koviak is a staff person for Geosyntec, and he did the city's prior optimization report in 2016 as an employee of I think he worked for Tetra Tech. So we've got experience there. And of the 3 consultants, or of the consultants that had PFAS experience, Geosyntec offered the lowest proposal. The other 2 that were screened out, that were lower than Geosyntec. The materials and testing just, they're just $8,000. I don't know if they fully understood the scope of work. The other bids came in at a range of $20,000 to $60,000, and no information regarding PFAS. So with that, I would, yeah, they were, with that, I would recommend moving forward with Geosyntec.
So moved.
Support.
Tenza,
Yes.
Theobald,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Hamner,
Yeah. Yes.
Solomon,
Yes.
Pesha,
Yes.
Kearney, Stark,
Yes.
Schichtel,
Yes.
Warner.
Yes. Marcus, you and Oren will handle the communication to the consultant, and then I believe we'll have to get a service agreement in place. And thank you. Let's move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you for your efforts, Julie and Brian, on the extra discussions we've had on this over the course of the month. Next up, Section F, yearly draft statutory and bylaw compliance calendar, distributed to the board in the next meeting packet. And so what you have in front of you is just a monthly compliance checklist. We seem to have some compliance issues in the past for Open Meetings Act, statutory law, bylaws, some EPA concerns. So anything that I've been made aware of in the last 5 months, I've added to this calendar as kind of a corrective action. So in every month, you're going to see the first 4 have to deal with the Open Meetings Act and make sure that we do those things proper per the Act. I put in their annual reviews. In October, there's an annual review to ensure that everyone on the board reviews the website to make sure we're compliant. In November, there's an annual review for all the board members to review the bylaws to make sure that we're in compliance as a team. And in December, there's an annual review for the Open Meetings Act for the entire board so we can make sure we're in compliance. Also in August, every 5 years, Kaiser puts out a report. And I put in for August, every 5 years, that we review that as a team, that we understand, and that we pass that Kaiser 5-year report on to City Council, because it's been mentioned in the past that hasn't been done. I also put on there, per our bylaws, 4 quarterly testing reports that it's discussed by our director and also passed on to City Council. And any other bylaw that I felt like we were having deficiencies, just simple things about monthly meetings, having quorum, electing positions on a yearly basis in June to start the fiscal year in July. So not to touch everything on here, it's a draft document. If anything comes across your table that we're not in compliance to, I'd like to add it to this checklist. Kind of a no-brainer list to make sure that we don't do the things we've been doing in the past.
Do we want to add a couple informational meetings tentatively in there?
We absolutely do, but we cannot have any business, and I figured that we got a little bit going on right now. So we'll have to do 2 of those towards the end of the year, because right now we cannot vote on anything or have any official business during those informal information meetings. And I do.
Where does that direction come from?
Where does the direction of what?
Well, in other words, can't you have a formal meeting and at the end of it have an informational section so we aren't all wasting time?
Just tie them together.
Sure, we could do that if the board feels like we should do that. And I can easily, at the board's request, add a couple different meetings to do that. From the ones I've seen in our meeting minutes in the past, it's not really a huge process. Let's see.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to provide some additional context that is similar but also very different. When City Council, so for instance, facilitates a public hearing, that public hearing itself is a part of a standard meeting agenda,
Right.
just as a standalone item, and that's how the informational meetings, even like with DDA, we just treat it as
As a separate meeting, so we don't have official business going on for the rest?
No. Well, it's just a separate agenda item. So it's a part of a regularly scheduled meeting. It's not an extra meeting. It's not a,
Okay.
I mean, it's up to the board.
Okay.
I would,
We can figure that one offline.
Can
I have to
I
take them.
suggest meetings that it might be good for?
Sure.
April would be a good one.
Okay.
So it's towards the end of the current chairperson's or that committee's term.
Okay.
So it's not right out the gate with the July when the new person takes over.
Mm-hmm.
So April would be good. and then maybe 6 months after that, do another one to also give the new chairperson, vice chair time to get
September?
their information together without just first being put on the board, so.
All right. Because the website specifically says the authority will hold 2 annual informational meetings for the purpose of informing the public of goals and directions of the authority, including projects to be undertaken in the coming year. They are not to be the purpose of voting on policy budgets or operational matters. So I had a note here that we need to add to the checklist, so I appreciate you guys bringing that up.
Another suggestion could be, because I think time is valuable, is just to have 2 meetings at the same time. So we will have an informational meeting, we will close the meeting, have an informational meeting, close the meeting, but it's the same time sequential. So people who wanted to participate would be here, they wouldn't have to calendar out 2 separate times.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very efficient idea. Thank you, Ms. Brown. All right. Any other comments on that? Okay, our last action item, I believe. Documentation added to the city website showing evidence of closure of all private wells in the restricted LDFA area. If documentation does not exist, then what are the current actions to be compliant with the city's 2018 ordinance and the EPA's 2010 mandate? Jeff?
Yeah, there is no, as we had talked in our agenda planning meeting, I'm assuming we're talking about the 3 parcels that are in the area. There is no documentation I can find of other wells that were closed at the beginning of the, in 1980s or 1990s. So if we're looking for that information, it does not, I can't find it yet. But we're going through the paper, every day we go through some paper and see what we can find, and then we do our other work too. The documentation is currently all the wells are still in the ground. Probably in the spring, we will actually hire out the contractor that will go and pull those wells, and we will have closure reports from the health department. I actually got the forms a while back that when you close a well, what you have to fill out and send to them. So when we do those, when it's better weather out, we will post those to the website at that point, and we'd have to redact some stuff because obviously it says the addresses and stuff of the people, but we will post something from the health department that says they were completed and pulled.
Okay.
So
Just to clarify, you said probably this spring. You mean this spring we will, correct?
right, it might be summer, but spring, summer, I mean, when the weather gets better. Let me put it that way. So, and I know the one person still wants to stay on as well. He still wants to drink it. I'm working, talking to him. He, at some point, he'll have to go on city water, obviously, but he's an older gentleman, and we're trying to be nice, and we're trying to, I'm trying to respect him and convince him over the long haul that this would be better for him. But he definitely, I don't want to be the heavy-handed going in and you will do this. I've offered again, you pick your contractor, you pick your days, you pick your, you pick everything, and just have them contact us and we'll arrange for the payment, and you don't have anything, to do with it other than allowing them in the house. But I want to be respectful, and I don't want to be heavy-handed. And if the board wants me to approach it a different way, I certainly can. But I would assume we want to be cognizant of people and respectful of them.
The third still doesn't have power.
And the third still does, as my understanding, still does not have power. So
And why is power
Any
necessary?
luck with that?
you don't need power to pull the well, but you, I know he wants stuff tested. And I don't think he wants the well pulled until after he gets stuff tested. So, it's and the state of Michigan doesn't want to test because it's not being used for drinking water. It's just a hole in the ground. We've got 1,000 holes in the ground out there, all those monitoring wells. We've got 1,000 holes out there, and they're not testing those. So MPART came in and just tested the active drinking water wells. So,
So without power, obviously, he's not drinking anything out of it.
I would suspect not. I mean, that makes a logical,
Have the homeowners that have been connected to the city water that still have an open well, have they been made aware that they're looking at spring, summer for?
I have not talked to those individuals. They do know, we're gonna pull it. They do know that we're actually gonna send a plumber back in, and they had a little bit of more plumbing in. Again, it's all at their pace, because I wanna be respectful to these people. They know that they're not paying anything, that we're gonna pick up that tab. So,
Maybe a heads up for them that, hey, in 4 to 6 months, we need.
well, I will go around and talk to them and say, whenever they want to start the process again, we can go through. I'm just happy they're currently on city water, and they're from all the reports I've heard, they're happy with the quality of that water compared to what they had. So,
Jeff, would it be helpful for you in your communication with folks if the board gave you some direction, like all wells will be pulled by August of 2025? All city, you know what I'm saying? Like, I appreciate your not wanting to have a heavy hand, but I think our interests are public health, and we want to make sure we're balancing that intent.
if you gave me a deadline, if the board chose that, I would do that. It would certainly give me a deadline to work up against.
I'm just asking, would it help you to provide that clarification to homeowners who have a lot of decisions to make? You know what I mean?
There's only 2 people in there. I can go and talk to them. I think being respectful is nice. I think if it drags on, as Matt's saying, not this spring, if it gets to summer and they're still not working on it, maybe that time the board would come out and say, okay, Jeff, we let you be respectful long enough. Now we got a public health concern, and we'll put a date. And now you can go back to them and say, this is the drop dead date, But I think right now, I like being respectful to them and letting them be in control of the process. So,
I definitely appreciate your transparency, that it hasn't been done. I appreciate your commitment to the actions so that we can get this done. And I also appreciate your urgency, because we did have 60 days from the 2018 ordinance. So this is something that we need to get done. So thank you for those words.
If I may
Yes.
also add, for the discussion, obviously, if compliance doesn't occur, we'll have to take legal action. And that is the next step.
which would probably be condemning properties, I would assume would be the ultimate.
Well, there would be 2 avenues.
Yeah.
You would either take legal action, or you would work with the EPA to see if that they would consider altering the mandate of 2010. But I would hope that we don't have to get to that point.
Again, I'd rather be respectful and talk to them and work them through the process. So,
Does the city ordinance require closing of the well?
It does.
I'd have to look at that
Yeah.
ordinance.
Yes.
I would think it does.
I think
Yeah.
everyone in the room knows that. Yes.
But is there a plan B? I mean, I know some well closure ordinances, and I haven't looked at the details, but can they demonstrate? I think the recourse, Mr. Chair, would be to Eagle, if there was one, where they would do their own testing and show that my well is fine. I'm not sure if that provision is in this ordinance.
If that was in the ordinance, and all these people have, the 2 we've tested do not meet that requirement.
So yeah, they test positive for PFAS, so they can't meet that standard.
Right.
That was a silly question officially. Sorry.
I answered
I
it.
appreciate your thoroughness. though.
Every once in a while, I'll throw one of those out, Mr. Dietland.
Keep us on our toes.
Yep.
All right, I think we
Just
can
checking.
move on to city updates for section 7.
Yep, Marathon Street just came in yesterday. I don't wanna, we had 8 bids on Marathon Street to do the complete project from the laying of the main to actually going inside the people's house, connecting them up. And they range from $278,564 to $419,834. So we're having them under review. I don't want to say the companies, they haven't even gotten out to city council yet, but we have our engineers reviewing these bids. So we had estimated 300,000 to do the connections and the water main pipe. And so we are very happy that it's underneath that price. Yeah,
Does that includes engineering,
that is everything.
and that includes,
Well, we've already done engineering, yeah,
so we've already,
Construction engineering costs that will be on top of that.
but we've done that already.
okay.
The
So
construction engineering estimate is about 15,000.
does that include like the decommissioning of the old wells?
Yes.
So I know you've got some evaluation to do. I don't want to press you for a decision at all, but what's a mid-range of those? If I could pick if there's like a middle of the road, in between number, just a
350,
350?
350?
Of the total bid, is that what you're asking?
Well, no, if you look at the bid, the bids as a whole, and what, if you could pick like a mid-range of all the bids, including
It's like
engineering.
350 only.
Yeah, I mean, 350 is median, but I don't think that's really I think we have some very reputable contractors in number one and number two position.
Okay,
So,
so if,
see any reason to not use those
oh,
lowest estimates as the true number.
so if some benefactor wrote you a check for 350, you could move forward without imposing any burden on the rest of the ratepayers.
Yeah, that's correct, and the permits are already in place, kind of fast track those, so this thing is literally ready to. There are some policy discussions that need to take.
Yeah, there are, Mr. Marcus, am I getting ahead of you, sir?
No, I was gonna just remind the microphone. Otherwise, we're not gonna have people at home be able to hear us. So.
Okay. But you still got some decisions to make in
Yes,
approval
yeah,
to make from the city
and I
council.
think as this board knows, we are looking at lobbying the state and the federal governments for outside funding issues, which, if we're successful with either one or even both potentially, that essentially, moots the upcoming public policy conversation that's gonna have to happen. And so, the timing is what it is. We're gonna be, I think next week, in Lansing, talking with officials to see, what the over-under is on some of this, and also petitioning our congressman's office as well. So hopefully, something will bear some fruit with it.
Thank you. I mean, the reason I'm pressing is that helps define the ask, and that's important. Thank you.
Yeah, and for the ask, I know that we're working on that public application for the ask, so we can now add some of these details in there. So
That's a much lighter lift than the 700, which was budgetary, and we just didn't know.
Yep.
Good news.
For 700, we could put sewer in there as well. So, but, that's
Good news.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Owen. Next is the Herring Township collaboration concerning Mary Street. Jeff?
Yeah, I have not heard back from Bob. I've sent him messages and left him voicemails, and he has not. I think they're reviewing their stuff on their end. So I really don't have an update on that. I do have an update on water delivery. We're delivering to the PFAS area. I think it's 50 plus cases of water a week now. I think most people have filters in, and we're delivering to homes that have filters in until we run out of water, and then or get to a low amount, and then we'll only be delivering to the people that don't have filters in yet. But I think most of the people have filters in now, but we don't want to turn anybody away. We did take 4 pallets over to Herring, and they're distributing those to their people. We had offered, I think, up to 10 pallets, but they only wanted 4 to begin with, so I don't know if they'll come back and get more pallets later on or not, but that's Herring, what they have to do. But on Mary Street, I think they're looking at it, and hopefully they're evaluating our proposal that we can help them. But again, I have not heard back from Bob. I think their meetings are once a month, and I think it's just hard for them to get traction on this right now for some reason. So,
And if I could, I just would like to clarify that, ultimately this becomes a policy decision by by city council in terms of, how we would connect, that area outside of the city limits. But the point that I wanted to clarify is that the conversation, at least internally, administratively with staff, is that we would look at this area very similarly to how the area around Lake Mitchell for the Lake Mitchell Sewer Authority is established. There is no annexation requirement. There is no requirement for there to be any kind of a temporary land transfer that would be under a Public Act 425 agreement. This is dare I use the word simple, but as simple as it could be, where we have a main in the vicinity. If the township desires to pay for the cost of extending that main and then developing the infrastructure necessary to provide to the constituents, we would be more than willing to have that conversation. Likewise, in terms of rates, we would obviously need to levy our, standard rates that we levy to our own customers of the system. But we're not trying to do any kind of a land grab or annexation or anything like that. So, but the township has options that they need to consider. That being one. Another one is extension of their own system, and they need to go through their own diligence period. We do have open communication with them, as Jeff just mentioned. Of the donated water that we have received, we are more than willing to help them by providing some of that as well. So I think we're working together. So.
Marcus has it been clearly communicated to Herring that it's not a land grab? Because talking to one of their board members, the first thing that came up was annexation.
Oh, no.
It has been clear, it has been clearly stated to them
In a letter?
that this is an email, that it's an emergency, emergent contaminant, and we can work with you. So, and that with no mention of land grab or any 425 or anything. They actually, I think I might have actually mentioned doing something similar that we're doing to the Clam Lake south of town, where they have a water agreement with us, and that we actually just maintain the system for them, but we'll bill for them, everything for them we'll do, and it's just part of an extension of our system that's in their area. But it's nothing, their land is theirs, so.
I would think an official letter from the city to the board would be the way. An email sometimes gets lost with the clerk or whatever.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you
Sorry.
for that suggestion, Mike. Is that what you were leaning on, Julie, or do you have more comment?
Actually, I was wondering if we would, say for instance, Mary Street, would we contract with Herring for those homes? So Herring would pay the bill, or would we bill the individual homeowner?
If we did it like Clam Lake, our arrangement with Clam Lake is the city would actually bill them directly for their water.
Bill them,
The homeowners directly. And we'd probably have a master meter on it before the transition from the city to the township. There'd be a master meter, but then each one of the houses would have an individual meter. It'd just be my guy would drive down with the meter reading van, they'd get the numbers, and we'd actually send it out. Now, whether Herring would have a surcharge that they wanted us to collect for them for this, or something like that, would all be discussed, and we obviously could get that revenue in and put it in an account if they had a surcharge or not, or however that would work. They would see the money, there'd be an accounting of it, and they'd know.
My other question is, the pallets of water that you're taking to Herring,
Yes.
the 4 that you've taken, are they paying you for those? Is that a good
Nope.
gesture from the city?
No, that's not a good gesture from the city. That's a good gesture from Ice Mountain. Ice Mountain gave us that water, and all credit should go to Ice Mountain. They gave us 2 semi-truck fulls. We're just being neighborly, so don't think us, think Ice Mountain. They gave us a whole bunch for the contaminated area.
So I
We
appreciate that.
passed it on, but yeah, so,
Waiting for it to come from Ice Mountain when we have it right here.
yeah.
That got
And-
it to the residents faster.
Yep, and what would we do with you know, if everybody got filters and or everybody got hooked up on Mary Street and they said, or Marathon, and they said, we don't need it, what would we do with, 15 pallets of water?
Togetherness, so.
Yep, that's Ice Mountain though. I give all credit to Ice Mountain on that one.
So I appreciate the suggestion of a formal letter. In my conversations with Bob, which are bi-weekly, and then he has his meetings, I think it's the second Monday of every month at 6 o'clock. I know Sue Baldwin's here from Herring Township. So I don't think it's properly communicated to them of what we're looking for or what we're trying to
Yeah.
offer. So if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it.
Yep, we can, for sure.
Okay, last on city updates is further update on resources to help families with potential long-term water hookup costs. And this was a request from a earlier public comment from a different meeting. Julie, do you have anything to touch base on that?
I did find that, like I had discussed before, that the Community Action Agency does have a program, and the health department does have a program, but the homeowners would have to call because there's criteria to it. So they would have to meet certain criteria if they were to get a loan or any kind of help through those.
Right.
So I will continue to look into any programs, and as I find them, I'll bring them to the board.
Julie, can you connect with Andy United Way? I know they're putting all information on 211. So if there's information about programs for funding or support, to have that included in the 211, so people call that and can get directed directly to that support,
Wonderful.
that would be great.
Okay. Andy Ulrich,
Yep.
correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
That's a great idea.
Sections 8, quarterly regular report, activities and financial condition of the authority. Report to be distributed in next city council meeting packet. And this is per our bylaws of 4 regular quarterly reports per year.
All
Jeff?
right. Hello, everybody. I got a report, a quarterly report. You all got this in your documents. It's a short one. I would request, I know on your monthly compliance checklist, I actually did this report for 2024, for the quarter ending in 2024, because I don't have all the results from the first quarter of March yet. So I think I would suggest that we be a little flexible and maybe move this quarterly report to April or May so I can get the test results back to get it more in line with current time. But right now I did 2024, the last quarter in 2024. So this little update would have a LDFA budget operations update, EPO. Oh, actually I should have gotten rid of the last 2 things there. Here's a current LDFA budget. I have a slide after this you guys can see, but that has it more broken out. But 63% of our budget is in utilities. Brian can talk about that most of our budget at the LDFA is in electrical costs. Salaries and fringes is about 13%, and then contract services, contract lab is a big one, that's 11%. So we do test a lot of things get sent out for the testing. Here's our breakdown of what our current budget is. And this doesn't say what we spent, but just what we appropriated. 21,000 was appropriated for wages, 9,000 for operating supplies, 2,000 for the chemicals audit. Legal and contractual services, 15,500 was budgeted. Contracted lab was 30,000, and utilities again $180,000. That is, 90% probably electricity, 10% is water, and more gas, and then a little bit is water. So, and then repair and maintenance, we're at 14,000. So operations, this is in 24 we did 794,000 gallons of water. Oh, I don't have my little note there. And up to year to date, from the beginning, we've done 23.9 billion gallons of water have ran through our treatment system. So that is a huge amount, 23 billion has run through. Influent groundwater VOCs, the concentration coming into the plant is from 19.2 parts per billion to 14.2 parts per billion. The approximate poundage that we remove from the water is 106 pounds of VOCs were removed in 2024. And the VOC concentration in the discharge is below detection limits since the startup in 1996, except 1 month we had an exception. And I always leave that in there. And you can ask me, and I'd have to look it up what month it was, but it was early on. But again, with our VOC concentration, all but 1 month we've been below discharge limits. This is a nice graph, shows where we started in 96, 97, and where we're at now, the VOC concentrations. In 96, we removed like 4,500 pounds of VOCs. And again, this last year, we removed 106, I think I said. So it's definitely trending in the same way. It keeps trending down. This is the pounds per year. I shrunk this from 2003 to 23 just because it gets a little cumbersome when I go back to 97. But as you can see, in 2003, we were just over 2,000 pounds a year. And again, now we're at 100 pounds a year. So we're pumping basically the same amount of water in, but there's such a decrease in concentration in what's coming in that we're getting a lot less out of it. So spending more money but getting less treatment, I guess I'd say, because the water's getting cleaner. So we're doing our job. We're definitely doing. I do not have a slide on hexavalent chrome because it just shows zeros. It's been zeros since 2008 or so. So I could have put that slide in, but that's one of the reasons why we started the process to close down the Northern Air Plating Superfund site. We would not be closing down, again, if we closed down that site, we would not be closing down wells, we would not be closing down treatment. It would just be, I wouldn't have to test every month for hexavalent chrome. They'd say you've cleaned up hexavalent chrome and you no longer have to test for that parameter. And they'd close down that site. We'd still be running the whole treatment system for the VOCs that were regulated. But so when we do talk about closing down the Northern Air site, it's just about the reporting of the hexavalent chrome, which is zero. Every time I test, it's zero. Zero coming in, zero going out. It is non-detect. So any questions or comments?
So that's an EPA decision, though, correct, in terms of determining that consideration for not testing for the hexavalent chrome?
Oh, yeah. That's why we've got QUAPs and everything that's going for that stuff. So.
And then perhaps just for the public, some of the images that you showed, especially the first slide, that was the actual local development finance authority facility and cleanup machinery.
Right. That is our main building right here. You can see the stripping towers outside. We have, as the board knows, we have mothballed one of those recently because we can get all our compliance with just one tower online, and that's saving us about $2,000 a month on an electric bill by not having the second tower on, because there's a transfer pump and a blower that has to go. EPA is fine with us doing that. I jumped the gun on that one, but then we talked to EPA and they were fine with us doing that because we have met the criteria of our discharge still. So.
I really appreciate this packet. We all know that media doesn't always work. You also know I'm quite the note taker, so it's nice to write down as you're going through the slides.
Yep.
And I can take this home with me and go back to it.
Yep. And
I really appreciate that. And with that, I also have a question. Is this something that is free at the counter for anybody that don't have computers?
That would be a city.
We can make it
decision.
available.
There's a lot of colored ink on that baby.
So,
Might
yeah,
be printed in black and white.
I'm computer challenged too. Thankfully, I have grandchildren, but so this is the basis, you know, and this is the basis of my opinion that the system's been, for the parameters that it was originally designed for, has been run effectively. And I don't take that opinion. I mean, I put some time into that opinion. I trust this report, but I also looked at the data that the LDFA has reported for 30 years, and you can see a definitive trend line, and then you see a bunch of zeros on majority of the wells for VOCs and all the chromium, and then you see the MPDS permit well below criteria, well below the permit limits. And this to me is worth noting and worth crediting to you and your staff and the prior LDFA board members for getting this right. And that's then also regarding you did some additional testing for VOCs. You reported to the LDFA, I think, a couple meetings ago, where I think you took like 12 or 14 tests from the same wells that MPART tested PFAS for, and you can't right now get that data out because it has the addresses of the people, and that needs to be confidential. But the data shows, I believe, that all of those were non-detect. There's one parameter for chloroform that was well below the cleanup criteria. So that's additional support that these VOCs that were a really nasty problem in the 1990s, and the public was at significant risk for this getting out into their wells. That's been addressed. We continue the mission, though. We're not done, and the big gap in the story, I think, is we haven't done quarterly testing for 4 years. The data looks good, but we need to continue to add to that, to verify that the risk is being addressed. The system is not done yet. There's still pockets of VOCs that need to be addressed. And that's my only issue with the operation, Jeff. But, and I'm not declaring. Let me be clear. I think the system's been run effectively. I am not declaring victory at all on this issue, but I'm saying well done for now, and we need to continue the work, and we need to really get a robust testing, and for the sake of the public has legitimate concerns that need to be addressed, and I do too.
And if I may, there was 20 homes we authorized outside the LDFA area for the state to test whichever ones they chose. So ACOM was their tester, and they are the ones that chose the wells we tested. So it was not the city, it wasn't the LDFA, it was when the state was collecting for the PFAS, we said, hey, we'd like to see if there's any VOCs out there. And so they collected for those 20 homes, and it was a random whatever they wanted.
And
So
I would note that it's those wells locations came from the broad perimeter of the LDFA. It wasn't just in one spot. So it's a good set of data. It's not enough. We need to press on.
Jeff, are we required to use a contracted lab, or is there any potential cost savings by using, or do they have the capacity at wastewater treatment?
They no longer have the capacity. When we first started, we had a gas chromatograph out there, but we no longer operate one of those.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
when we first started, they actually brought one because they thought we would be doing VOC testing so much, but it fell off so quick. The cleanup was doing such a good job right from the beginning that our sampling parameters cycles got lowered and lowered. So,
Okay, thank you.
All right, Jeff, thank you for this report per our bylaws. I appreciate it. One last thing I would just ask, though, is if you can make sure that this report is distributed to City Council so that meets our bylaws as well.
Would you want it
The
distributed
next-
with the
in meeting
minutes?
packet, yeah.
I mean, with these minutes or with the past minutes? It won't be,
Just-
should I wait for the minutes that it was presented in?
We can include it in the packet.
You know, I mean, which, whatever you
For
want.
the
I
next
just-
city council meeting, if it could be part of their packet, this presentation.
Yeah,
It'll
I'd
be in the
appreciate
reports. I'll help you.
And if there's a
Okay.
better method, we can determine that offline. I just want to make sure we meet the bylaws.
yep.
Okay, next is section 9, update on Cadillac monitoring plans, quality management plan, institutional control, implementation, and insurance plan.
Yep.
To be in compliance with the E EPA.
Yep. I was talking to Catherine the other day, our EPA contact, and the sites with contaminants of concern, quality assurance project plans have been approved by the EPA. The PFAS QAP, quality assurance project plan, has been submitted by our contractor and is waiting EPA review currently. Some of the steps we have to complete yet is we have to do an inventory of our extraction wells out there, our sampling wells, monitoring and sampling wells, to identify if there's any wells missing in our sampling plan that we'll have to identify other wells. Sometimes people will snow plow over one. Sometimes people will remove one that we don't know, and it's one that we're actively sampling. If you guys have been out to the LDFA area, and I have a map in my office, I do not kid, there's probably like 100 monitoring wells out there. Some was put in by LDFA, well, none were put in by LDFA, but some were put in by DNR, some was put in by Kaiser, some were put in by Rexair, some were, so, and those get used to get the data. So again, some of those disappear over time because nobody tells us that they're doing construction or something. We have to submit an updated monitoring plan, including, we got to include PFAS and 1,4-dioxin, and Fleece and Vanderbrink, our contractors, working on that now. Along with that, when we do start sampling again, our first sampling cycle, we are doing a complete yearly sampling. The yearly sampling has 4 times the test wells as our quarterly, and it's always in the fall. But when we get this up and running, we're going to do the very first sampling event we do is going to be a yearly, then we'll go to the quarterly, and then when we get to whichever fall it falls on, we'll put that yearly sampling back in the fall so we can compare apples to apples historically with our historic data. But we want to make sure that our very first sampling cycle is a complete, everything you can sample, this is where we're at, and and go forward from there. So there's no, oh, you guys are easing in. We're going to go both feet in. Again, I have to submit the drawing for the.
Sorry, just-
Yep. Go. Sorry.
That's for PFAS, right?
No, that's for VOCs, and PFAS is its own new entity, and
Something.
we'll do whatever they tell us. I don't think there'll be an annual on the PFAS. I think it'll just be quarterly samples, which will be the same wells all the time.
And I know this is a naive question, but remind me. When they sample, we're sampling before treatment and after treatment, or just after treatment? I know we've done all of it, like at the
Right.
point of just like all of the places, but
We
for this
sample
regular testing of PFAS, what does that look like?
for PFAS or for VOCs.
PFAS.
For PFAS, we're doing it before treatment and after treatment.
Okay.
We're doing both, or we have done both.
Okay.
On the VOCs, what we're talking about out on the VOCs is sampling the monitoring wells,
Right.
and we'll sample our production wells, but we won't sample after treatment because we do that normally we do that every month.
Right.
So they won't duplicate that one. But what they'll do is they'll take a production well, say, what are you getting out of that? And we'll do a whole, and then might take one that's a monitoring well that's 100 foot away and say, let's put a pump in there, let's pump out the water, let's see what we're getting over here. And so, yeah, and again, our annual ones, I can't venture to guess how many wells we do, but I'd say it's 4 times the number of the quarterly sampling.
Okay.
And it's just kind of all over, and so we want to get that baseline again.
Yeah.
We're starting back up, then go to the quarterly, and then go back to the annuals in the fall, so we can correlate that fall data to the previous annual samples that were in the fall.
Thank you.
Because there might be some rain events or something that historically happens, that this is why we always did it in the fall. So,
And the only pre-treatment for PFAS is I-5, because.
right, I-5
Soon to be S1.
Well, only treatment, not pre-treatment, only, well, yeah, the only one that we're treating anything is I-5 with carbon. And, and then, I gotta ensure, as the board said, I gotta ensure that the 3 people are hooked up to the city water and their private wells are abandoned. EPA, their next step is to review the PFAS QAP and to complete the 5-year report, that's due in August.
So Jeff, the VOC plan's approved, signed, sealed, delivered by EPA. I would imagine you probably aren't gonna start testing until you probably wanna test for both VOCs and PFAS at the same time? Or are you gonna go forward with
First-
testing for VOCs right away?
First, we have to go out and do the inventory of the monitoring
got
wells.
it.
So by the time we get that inventorying done, I would assume they're kind of fast tracking the PFAS, and we'll have our contractor go and do all of them at one time. I would, would be my preferred method, is just go out there and
Yeah, it makes
do
sense.
both, and then
Timing, when do you, timing is important. We need to move forward for a lot of reasons, but when do you see the tests being able to be pulled for both PFAS and VOCs?
Well, I can't do the PFAS because they have to approve the quality.
Right.
Yet. So I would assume, I'd say we can get out now and look for wells. So I'd say probably late April, early May, maybe, if the EPA
Yeah.
approves the QAP.
Yeah.
It could be later if they don't, or if they want, again, they want us to change one of the monitoring plans, some of the stuff in it,
So, Jeff and I have, expressed an interest, and I do appreciate you moving the annual up to the first set. That's great. I really appreciate that. But I think, Jeff, did you express an interest in maybe looking at the Matt, do look at the
I would love to be involved with the draft version of the well testing plan.
just don't call you late for supper.
Yes. I would love to be involved with that, and so far I appreciate the information that you've been sending.
Yep.
Did EPA comment on our draft PFAS plan?
Nope, that's on her note here that they've got a comment yet. They got to review it and.
Oh, they haven't issued comments? Okay. So we don't know how many wells they're looking for us to test? Okay.
Nope, they got to come back with that yet, so.
Fleece has submitted a draft to them.
Police, what Catherine says that they have, so she got back to me on that, so I want to, I called her and asked her where do we sit on everything, so.
Thanks for following up with it.
Catherine's the EPA contact.
Yep, Catherine Niled.
Yeah, and Matt, maybe you wanna set up a subcommittee of you and Brian, if that's who's gonna deal with it, so there's some formality to what we're doing.
Yeah, I won't pretend that I understand the formalities of subcommittees, but I can look into that. I know that we've been
Oftentimes
doing.
discussed in bylaws.
Yeah, we've been doing subcommittees, off discussions with the proposal bids and for the well testing plan, and I have no issue of following exact policy. I'll look into that, sir.
And Jeff, I want to look at it, have LDFA, it's important that we move forward with this, and if Catherine's ready to approve, Matt and I aren't gonna fly spec this to death.
There's
Oh,
probably,
and I-
in the last month, there's been 15 or 20 meetings that we've been involved with, and I appreciate, if you want to call them subcommittees, but we're just trying to not have 6, and we're trying to just make sure things are being done to process and to compliance, so.
Yeah, and I'm also trying to ensure that if other people wanna participate, there's
For
some
sure.
recognition of that.
Absolutely. We can do that. Good call.
Happy for the additional team members. This is all quite overwhelming.
Okay, treasurer report is up for section 10. It's 2 sections here. The first part is the treasurer's report. I don't know, Bill or Owen, is there anything from the packet that you want to, because we do have to talk about the budget being
Yeah,
finalized.
I think the budget would be the priority, Mr. Chair. What I would cite, just three quick messages, because expense savings has been referenced a few times, and Jeff, thanks for teeing it up. Mr. Warner and I, my name is Bill. Mr. Warner and I met with consumers for two public purposes for this board. One was to examine their foundation cycle, and so we got great information out of that for future grant ask. But secondly, I was concerned about seeing some of the utility expenses as related to consumers. We scheduled a meeting with consumers. That has now been, I would say, that interface is with Jeff and consumers on looking at a new rate review or some ability to look at some utility savings. So, and the last thing, I appreciate Owen formatting this for me, is we'll see that TIF capture posted this month. So next month we'll get the complete look at that. So just information, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So that section B, budget finalized, full approval by the board, trying to get ready for city council's approval. Jeff, do you have anything to review from last month's update before we vote on it?
Actually, I thought Owen was taking the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know, maybe
I apologize. Owen, I have you on here as well. Thank you, Owen.
So I don't really have anything to highlight necessarily. Mainly want to just throw it out there for discussion. I believe the documents were in the packet. Is that correct? For review, really, it keeps us moving forward. The tax capture and the details are on, I guess if we address that fund number 495 first, that's where the tax capture revenues come in. We are capturing about $5.3 million in ad valorem, which is just the normal, according to value, tax roll, and an additional $1.8 million in IFT, industrial facilities tax exemption revenues, and those are typically levied at about 50% on the millages. So that's going to result in a total capture around 167,000 for fiscal year 26. So there was one section of that that's still in yellow. I just have really preliminary taxable value numbers, and so just wanted to get it as close as we can at this point. But I did just receive some very preliminary numbers, so they're estimates. So I kind of leave it highlighted for my own sake to go back in there. And once those get a little more firm, we're right in the middle of March border review, so those numbers will change a little bit. And before we actually publish the document, I'd like to get those dialed in a little bit more when we know those numbers.
Owen, I don't think I put what you're talking about in the packet. I don't know if.
Well, those budget pages were not in the packet? Okay.
I do not believe they were. I don't
Okay.
think I received them. Maybe I did.
Okay.
I had a-
Yeah, we just have the revenue and expenditure report ending
Yep.
in February
Okay.
of 25.
I'm sorry, if I did receive those, that's my fault. I didn't see those, so.
So I guess a couple options. I can print off 10 copies real quick if you want to hold, or we can just kind of keep talking about it. We'll certainly email these out as we go. So I guess I was summarizing. I'll give you a little bit more detail. So the tax capture fund plans on capturing about $167,000 in property taxes. Once you get these documents, it details it out by millage and authority. Should earn about $32,000 in interest income, and use looks like an estimated 148.5 to transfer to meet all the obligations of those funds. And the expenses then would be $500 to participate in the city's audit. Contractual services of $50,000, and that I think is to do these overall plans. Anything that really is not the monitoring reports would flow through these funds. And so about $347,500 in expenditures. $297 of that is a transfer to fund the operations. On the operational side, that's the only revenue source, $297,000. We have salaries and fringes of about $38,000. some operating supplies, so this would be, you know, chemicals or whatever the things that the treatment system would need, 9,000. Contractual services on that side are about 18,000, so I'm not exactly sure yet what the actual quarterly monitoring costs are, so that may need to go up or down, but we'll always be back with an amendment, which is no problem at all once we kind of settle into that rhythm of the quarterly testing. There is still a budget for some legal contractual services. Again, as we've talked about a couple of times, the general fund is picking up a lot of these initial costs. Audit in that fund as well. Contracted lab costs to pay for the testing, 180,000 in utilities, and then some repairs and maintenance. It's 14,000 as a budget for repairs and maintenance. We haven't spent anywhere close to that. The system has continued to work very well, but that leaves some flexibility if we have to undergo a significant repair. So again, you'll have these, I would assume, shortly after this meeting in your email. Happy to print those off right now and bring them to you before the end of the meeting, whatever everyone would like.
I'd like a copy of it.
Like a copy? Okay.
Copy, but I think
All
we
right.
can.
I'll print a copy for everyone, and if you don't want it, you can just leave it. Any questions?
I think the question Mr. Warner had raised about the closed generation well
Yep.
and that income, is it just a matter of where that could be siloed, those dollars?
Yeah. Mhm.
And have we ever accounted for, I know it's not a today discussion, but closure costs? And is any monies of our investment restricted for closure?
Yeah, good question. There's never been a study or I think you would need an engineer. Again, this would be what an engineering firm would do. I think that the data that's going to filter down from a lot of these plans that are in progress, that talks about timing. Do we have to operate for 20 years or 40 years? And that would dramatically change, what those closure costs look like and what in present value today's dollars you would need to kind of set aside as a reserve.
But there's no statute or anything that says X amount has to be reserved for eventual closure of our investment dollars?
I've not seen that.
Just
I have not seen that as part of the paperwork that I've looked at. I mean, that's additional research that we can do as far as closure costs. And again, we can start.
Not a today discussion.
Yeah, and there is at the end of fiscal year 24, about $1.18 million in the fund. So it would be this authority's discretion to begin to kind of earmark those for various purposes. And we can certainly set those aside in the financials pretty easy.
If I may, the new environmental consultant that we just got on board could easily come up with a number for the closure costs. If the board, decides they want him to, when they do their reports, we could throw that in to have a preliminary closure cost number. So,
yeah, and you'd have to pay for that number, obviously. Yeah. You'd have to pay for that. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Owen. So part of the agenda is the approval of the budget. Somebody want to do a motion to approve?
I would make that motion.
Second.
Theobald,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Hamner,
Yes.
Solomon,
Yes.
Pesha,
Yes.
Kearney, Stark,
Yes.
Schichtel,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes.
Tenza.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to section 11, update on grant writing for either Brian or Mr. Tenza.
Mr. Chair, since this really is the grant funding is really this is a city effort. Our LDFA volunteers are acting in support. I would, Marcus, would you mind?
Sure. Yeah, I could provide just a quick overview or summary. As I think everybody on this board knows, it's without a doubt a team effort. You folks as solid volunteers are really helping to pave the way. We have also, volunteered a member of staff in a completely unrelated department that handles primarily planning and zoning related issues to help with with some grant writing as well. Jeff's folks are also chipping in to help with it. And as some of you know, we're going to be essentially taking a field trip next week. I'm going to be in Lansing for a municipal capital conference as it is, and while there, we'll be meeting with a few of you to meet with our legislators to really try to push this forward in terms of getting on their radar and trying to get, you know, a special appropriation or grant. So.
One of the examples of those grant options is a federal grant option through Congressman Molinar's office.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, you've got a pretty good relationship with Congressman, and so you know we need letters of support, and this is really a team effort, and a broader team is better. And then another, I mean, I want to disclose to the group that I've been in contact with a couple of my folks I've worked with at Eagle, and I do think it's under discussion. It's an option that we could receive funding from Eagle, and then Mr. Tenza is a great contact with consumers, and Bill, I think consumers might be an option. So there's a number of options here that we're working through, and
There's
you know,
a summary in the packet.
yes, and it starts with, you know, this really good grant document that the board members have, and I hope is available to the community members. It summarizes our need. It's subject to amendment.
Yeah.
Because we had one budget number for the Marathon Road project that we will probably want to amend. That's a lower number.
Sorry, Brian, is that in the packet?
I don't,
It was emailed out to everybody. So.
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm familiar.
Can we get a copy of that with Owens
It's emailed.
after?
Yeah, we got
Look
it.
at the email.
I think we sent that out, but it's not in the packet? Okay.
Not the back of it. It
I apologize.
was delivered by-
Yeah, it was sent out, but.
So, you know, so Matt, with that, can I move forward with the consideration of a
Resolution?
resolution of support for
Yes, sir.
the
I
city's
don't
grant?
see it in the packet, but if we could get a vote on that, that would be great.
I would make a motion for the resolution as presented in the email, if that's possible.
I would support.
Because I did review and
I
read
I
that.
do have, Marcus, you remember the motion that Art was preparing for the Wexford County? You had one edit,
Yes.
so I would consider that a friendly amendment, and could you pass this out to the rest of us? There's one sentence you modified.
I would friendly support if Jen Friendly makes that motion.
I think that's the right verbiage, a friendly
Yes.
amendment. Mike, I'm sorry you haven't seen this grant document.
I saw the email, I didn't know
Yeah.
if that was, I saw what you're referencing though.
It's a good plan. Started with Jeff. It's a good plan. And I also want to recognize Susan's group and Mary. This is about an infrastructure request for providing clean water to the folks that are impacted by PFAS, but there's other work being done by volunteers in the community. This isn't just about infrastructure, it's about money for testing and water, and just there's a whole nother group of funding needs that I think that needs to be addressed, that Susan is working on, and others, and I want to recognize their group, and I want to thank them for considering a similar resolution to support the city. And we'll get other resolutions, I believe, as we go. The challenge in getting the resolutions is these grant deadlines are coming up like right now. And it's so hard, like, to get a resolution from the chamber or the Rotary. We're just doing what we can with with the time that we have, and not worrying about trying to get a perfect picture, but just moving forward. Yes.
And on that end, we do have a sample or a template letter of support And with the representation on this board coming from the chamber, from CAPS, from, you know, the industrial fund and whatnot, I think it would be great if we could try to get, you know, something turned around maybe by the end of this week, in terms of a support letter. And I can send out that sample, if you guys need another copy, happy to do that today.
I've been in touch with GL Pan, and they're writing a support letter with the help of Susan. I know that Cadillac Advocates for Clean Water are writing a support letter. I know
I've
that-
also reached out to Michelle Hoytinga, our senator, and John Roth. Does not represent city of Cadillac, but he still cares about our citizens, so.
I do have
Represents
a
Richmond,
a question though regarding the support letters. Who's collecting them? And that is that you, Brian?
No,
That is
no.
Brian.
Okay.
Oh boy.
That is Brian.
I think it is important, and I've not done a good job at this. I've been just, you know, in sort of timing.
No, that's fine.
I understand the preferred route is collection, Susan, just so we know. We need to get them to Marcus, because since they're the grant applicant, it's not a bad thing if they send them in individually, but it's better if we combine them to one submittal. Is that correct?
I mean, that's fine. I just wasn't entirely sure, you know, who was taking the lead on the collection of it. And
I don't think that's been
Okay.
defined yet, sir.
Yeah.
I just.
Like you are.
It sounds like it.
There's a lot going on, so we appreciate you volunteering.
Yeah.
But you do need them by the 18th for our
Right.
trip down to Lansing.
Right, right. Yeah, I really need it by the end of the week.
Marcus Julie's
I
nominated me.
would really like to see Brian collect them, put the packet together,
Oh.
and send it to you.
Okay.
Got to
That's
step
fine, too.
backwards.
So we can probably proceed without a vote on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can,
But
yes.
if Marcus needs them by the end of the week, when does Brian need them?
Oh,
I'm just saying, like,
That's
that's
a great
another,
question.
like,
Telling people this is
that's
coming.
another
well,
step.
well, I will say, our kind of our key deadline is, you know, Senator Peters has a deadline of the 17th. That's just not gonna happen.
The letters?
What's that?
For the letters, he's it, or
Well, for the grant
application?
application, and we're just, we gotta keep our wits about us and do what we can do and not drive ourselves crazy. So the 21st is really a kind of a key deadline, don't you think, Marcus?
Well, I was hoping we could bring him to Lansing with us.
Okay,
So that's
18th.
why I had suggested, you know, frankly, I really need him by Monday.
Remember, this is something
So-
that's ongoing, though.
Yeah.
These grants are
Yeah.
going to pop up, so we're gonna need this ongoing. So not 17th or the 21st and we're done. We need to
Right.
continue to
It's-
get these things.
you know, we're in the we're in the funding appropriations window, and I don't know when that window officially closes, but we know we have a meeting on the 18th, so if you can get them to me by the 17th.
Yeah, I mean, Brian, you could grab them and just bring them too.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Jen, that's a good question.
Okay, so with that, do we want to vote on the resolution as a board? Somebody want to support that?
Jen made the motion, I support it.
Hamner,
Yes.
Solomon,
Yes.
Pesha,
Yes.
Kearney, Stark,
Yes.
Schichtel,
Yes.
Warner,
Yes,
Tenza,
Yes.
Theobald,
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
and
Any
Matt,
other letters that you needed?
I have a clean copy of the resolution if you want to execute, if you want to sign
Oh.
that.
Very good. So we have 9 yeas. 0 nays. Can pass that out. Any other letters that you need approved or resolutions, Brian? Are you all set? Are you all set?
I'm all set.
Okay.
This is our first
All right.
resolution, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for all the work behind this in the last month.
And another, just to recognize another member of the team is Mr. Stevens, who has been working diligently.
Okay. That brings us to public comment. This is a session with no open dialogue. You may address the board with your comments, and each person has 3 minutes.
Hello all, my name's Carla Moore. I just had 2 quick things. Julie, you mentioned something about loans for people. I was gonna suggest, go to USDA.gov. They have, it's like a home improvement loan, and I don't know the current terms, but they were extremely favorable for the borrower, for the homeowner. Like 0%, and it's forgivable and stuff like that. So I strongly recommend checking into that. The other thing I would like to really address is the computer that Jeff is using. Can you guys like get him a new computer? I mean, it's not that hard. And then fix whatever needs fixed, and then recycle it or donate it or give it to someone else that works there or something, because it's gonna reach a point of disaster, and everything he's doing today is going to be gone too. So that's what happens when you have a corrupted computer. And it's like, I think that there needs to be like a backup system. It's an automatic thing. I know somebody has to have an IT department here, like in the city, I would hope. And they should be in charge setting every employee with, like, at the end of the day, when you push the button to close it, it automatically does it. You don't have to do anything. It's an automatic thing. It's cheap. It's not even expensive. It goes into a cloud. Everything is available to everyone, and then you're done, and that's it. And so I just really would like to highly recommend that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla.
Hi, Brad Marine. I appreciate what y'all are doing as far as moving forward, but my goal is to hold you accountable. And I'm flabbergasted that some of you have been on this board for years and you didn't have a copy of the bylaws. I sat on my share of boards. First thing they give you is a set of bylaws. And some of you have enough experience, you should have been saying, where are the bylaws? Because as a result, you had a meeting in 2020 where you discussed PFAS in private, Mr. Hamner, Jeff, Marcus, and decided to push back against the EPA for testing for PFAS. So the result of that is you now have people who have been poisoned. We have the blood work. We have the wells. Because you did not ensure that you were following the Open Meetings Act. You didn't publish that. There's nothing on the city calendar. I FOIA'd it. There's not a doggone thing on there. That meeting was held in secrecy. It's in violation of the Open Meetings Act. And you all don't even know that you're supposed to have a meeting every month. Section 2, page 2 of your bylaws. You all should be, that's the first thing you ought to read. And Ms. Brown, you ought to know the Open Meetings Act. You're the superintendent of the doggone school board. You know the significance of that. The transparency and accountability is huge. Because I can promise you, if Mr. Hamner and Jeff and Marcus would have had a discussion about PFAS, Susan would have lit up. And there would have been a proactive approach to dealing with this. The fact that you operated for 14 years and had no clue where the bylaws were is 15, totally unacceptable. And I'm glad you admitted that, because I'm sure that'll come handy. Think about the liability you are facing. Think about the family that's got the health issues with cancer that's sitting back watching this unfold. And they're seeing these extreme violations of the Open Meetings Act. Think of the liability that you, who have been on the board in the past, have put yourself in. Simply because you didn't know the bylaws. And you had a director or a chairperson who operated for 14, because that, imagine telling a judge, well, that's just the way we've always done it. Excuse me? Isn't there statutory language that you're supposed to follow? Yeah, but we just kind of arbitrarily implement 2018 ordinances. You know, if it's a feel-good thing, I'll do a feel-good thing. Where do you draw the line? What if he doesn't like me? He's going to make me pay right away. But if I'm an old man and I feel like I'm hurting, he's going to feel sorry for me. No, that's not how government works. The ordinance is an ordinance. Rules are rules. Simple. Y'all let us down. The ones that have been on the board for a while. And I'm very disappointed that you had that conversation in secret. Because you have poisoned people because of that. You had an opportunity to stop it. And you did not. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Bill Barnett, another Bill. So you've talked about Marathon. Thank you for doing that. You have Mary Street, Houston, West Division, Leeson, Arthur, Seneca, several more streets. You got a calamity. You have to work on more than one street. You don't. The city does. Can you please encourage them to move faster? There was a discussion earlier. I'm sorry I wasn't here, but I heard some of it about contaminants. The EPA is in control of this. They're going to tell you whether TCE and or solvents and or PFAS is something that they're going to act on. And they've already acted on it. They did it in 2020. Your documents say all contaminants, not just the ones that were mentioned earlier. And I think PFAS is under that, and they're going to tell you that. So it is your responsibility. They told you they wouldn't close without testing. So that's 5 years old. 7 years after the 2018 ordinance that the EPA also required to put into place. It obviously wasn't enforced. 6 years of information was recently skipped over at a city council meeting. 18 to 24 is what I'm guessing. So I'm going to ask the city to take a number of steps since many of them are present today. One is to get these meetings back on TV, on CCTV. They need to be on for people with cable. I've had a lot of people asking, how can they watch it on TV? And that needs to be addressed. And I understand there's a legal problem, but I'd ask the city to get moving on it and get that set up in your building here and get the meetings back on TV. There's 2 wells that I've found with some people's help in between Lincoln School and the Clam River. They're drinking or they have no water bill. I assume they're living there. I shouldn't have to go over there like I did for J.T. Anderson, beg him for months to get his water tested. Or tell the guy on 13th Street, shut your well off. You got to do something to help that guy because he doesn't understand PFAS at 17, 10 times larger than and more dangerous than PFOA, which is everywhere. It's the industrial footprint. It's everywhere, folks. But we have a major problem here. I would ask you check those 2 homes out. They're not hard to find, and they need to be told to stop drinking the water. I say that because tests are coming back on 13th Street. Look at the big chair out there. That's got some hot wells out there. There's a family out there that has a hot well on 13th Street, across the street, right by the big chair. Just look at that area there, how to get over there. How close is that to the wells that are still open, looks like on the well logic, in between Lincoln School and the Clam River. So you need to test over there. The dumping ground's been the Clam River. Sadly, I wish it weren't. I wish it would stop. Could you please consider changing the direction of this discharge? And I'd ask that you start testing more to learn about what's happened to those wells over in that area. And are they impacted by the Clam River, which is looking very obvious. So Herring Township's paid for a bunch of water tests. I hope Clam Lake does that as well. There's now a detection in Harmony Hills. Let me say that again, Harmony Hills, up huge subdivision with a lot of people, a lot of very in-tune people that need to know that. They need to have their wells tested. 41 Road, you're 2/10 of a mile from your new water, $11 million water building and wells. 2/10 of a mile away on 41, there's a well with PFAS showing.
Excuse me, Bill, if you could just finish your thoughts. You're over 3 minutes. I've tried to give you enough.
Would I have some additional time? Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be here earlier because the meeting's not on Monday, which is according to your bylaws, and I had a court case and Wednesdays don't work. And it's unfair, I think, to me to...
Well, I do know that you're involved with a lot of the groups around town, so I'll give you 5 minutes. I do think that you don't have a lot of questions, but you're making some great recommendations, and I do think it seeks to the benefit of the community. So please proceed.
Thank you. I'm sorry to sound like I'm rude about it. I just, I'm frustrated. So I would ask that you get the city, Herring, Clam Lake, and the LDFA all together in a room immediately. because Clam Lake has a problem now too. You need a joint meeting, you need a resolution to promote testing, to pay for testing, to get state funding for a health study, a blood study, mental health support, a blanket testing plan. 90% of the wells in Cadillac are testing positive for PFAS, 50% over federal criteria. It's a crazy mess. The city owns this facility. It was given in exchange for the operation and maintenance duties. I've finally found that answer. You'd continue to need a new director, a new consultant, new engineer, new attorney. 3.5 years of no testing. Please make those changes. 23 billion gallons of PFAS-filled water went into the Clam River. That wasn't on your display today. That's what happened. 23 billion gallons of poison water went into the Clam River. Can we please stop doing that? Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Good, we're in the afternoon, I think. Good afternoon, I'm Art Stevens. I did want to mention something that Mr. Warner mentioned, and I did get verification since, actually today, the 2 grants with Senator Peters as well as Congressman Molinar. As long as we submit those and get them in, we can add support documents after. So good question of having it go to Mr. Warner, because we can collect those and add them to him. So just wanted to make that note.
Thank you.
And on a quick question, I know there was some discussion on the 2018 and getting these other properties that still have private wells in the LDFA district. I did want to just mention the encouragement would be to just have them go back, the city, to the 2018 ordinance and just follow that ordinance that's in place. If they follow that to a T, there's a notification, and then there's a time frame, and there's steps if it's not done. That would probably be the step. Unfortunately, it didn't get done back then, but that ordinance still is on, it's on the books as an ordinance unless they want to change that. So that would be something, I know for your board, up until this September, it was off your radar that those wells were still private. I know that in 2020, it was told for some reason to the EPA that everybody was hooked up and all the private wells were capped, and that even on your board was being told. I listened to some meetings and up to August, so you guys as a board would have been under that impression that they were all capped and everybody was hooked up, because that was in the Kaiser report given from city staff to them in 2020, as well as in the minutes. You guys were under the impression they were all closed. I do want to also end on a big thank you to this board. I'm sure none of you signed up for this. Like, hopefully there's a major issue in the city that's going to take a lot of time. I want to be on that. But you have stepped in as a board. It's been impressive to see the way there were things that had to get changed and how fast. Government's never been accused of running too fast. So seeing how quickly you've put together this committee, and Chairman Schichtel for putting together and making sure, boy, here we are. I know it seems like a nuisance to have to make sure you're following everything to a T, but that makes good government and hopefully makes, future issues down. Impressed with all of you for taking the leadership on this. A lot of this effort in getting a solution is coming from a lot of you members on this board, and the efforts very much a thank you, because you're not getting this if you could all get nice pay raises on what you're doing. On zero, we could give you 30-40% pay raise. So appreciated, and seeing the community come together to look at a solution. I know it started with a lot of the volunteers right on this board. So thank you for taking that leadership role. Thank you.
Any other public comments? next is the committee's response to public comments, and instead of speaking first, I'm gonna open the floor for anyone that would like to speak to Carla, Brad, Bill, or Art's public comments. Go ahead, sir.
Just wanted to mention, unless I'm wrong, we are televising this meeting live. Our television provider, Charter, no longer has a physical connection to this building. It is unknown when that'll be back, but all of the meetings that are here, including the one today, we are streaming. Is it through CCTV/YouTube, Owen? Yeah, through CCTV, and I believe that it also becomes a YouTube link. So even today's meeting, we just have a wide out view, but the cameras are on and we are streaming them. So as long as you have some form of internet connection, which if you were a Charter subscriber and used to watch it through Charter, hypothetically you would still have some form of internet connection and be able to still watch it online as well. So we are doing any meeting that way until the issue with Charter is resolved, which I don't have a timeline on that. I just want to clarify too that the city slash LDFA has not poisoned anybody. We have not created this contamination. I know that seems to be information that continues to get shared out there, and it's just simply not true. So I'll leave it at that.
Anyone else?
So I know this meeting is getting long. I don't want to extend it too long. But I do want to let the board know, and I think we all, we're working together. And the public knows this. My focus is solutions. My focus is moving forward. I think that's much more important than looking at past actions. It's an important time. We have a window of time to seek funding for not only solutions but implementation of solutions, getting clean water to people that are impacted. And just in my experience, it's so important that we stay focused. We present a united front. That is important for grant writers to see, a community support. That's the reason for the Moline request for letters of support. It's a basic is very important. I never want to discourage any member of the community to not call out public officials, including volunteers on this board, from being accountable. That's a critical part of our country. It's a critical part of the democracy. It's a right. It's a responsibility. But I would just go back to an old adage of my grandmother's, who said, "Look, if you want to criticize someone, and they're worthy of criticism, look for something good. Look for 3 things good that you can also add to that criticize." And I think the time for looking for something good and supporting what's positive is here. And I would, as an example of that, I would point out Susan's group, the Clean Water Citizens Group. There's some issues that they have with the city they disagree with. There's many issues that I look at some of their ideas I disagree with, but I just give Susan's group as an example. In spite of all that, they're looking at a letter of support for this grant application. That's the kind of support I'm looking for. I'm not asking for people just to say I agree with everything, but where we can agree, let's move forward. That it's important for the citizens that are impacted.
Anybody else? Okay, Bill and Art, thank you for your recommendations and advice. I truly appreciate that. A lot of wisdom between the two of you. Carla, your comments about record retention criteria and potential IT department assets. I can't really speak to that. I don't know. Record retention is a key criteria to any entity to make sure that key documents are not lost over time. So those are the things that I think I've kind of said enough about that issue, so I'm not going to make any comments about that. As far as Brad Marine, accountability was your main theme. For me, my highest priority now that grant writing is done, my highest priority is accountability. And how do we solve those concerns? I think we need to, number one, be compliant to the EPA. We need to begin our quarterly testing again. We need to make sure all the residents in the industrial park are hooked up. We need to ensure the 5-year Kaiser reports are distributed to our board and to the city council every 5 years. And those things are now added on our compliance checklist. So as of today, we're trying to do things a little bit differently, or should I say as of the last 5 months. The second thing we need to do is we need to be compliant to statutory laws and Open Meeting Act. So we need to ensure that meetings are posted at least 18 hours before the meeting. We need to ensure that proposed meetings are available for public inspection within 8 days. We need to ensure that approved meetings, minutes, which is the big one, are available for public inspection within 5 days. And then globally, we need to make sure that the board members have a copy of the Open Meetings Act summary and review it annually. And those are all added to the checklist. The third thing we can do for accountability is we need to be compliant to LDFA bylaws. We've talked about this a lot. We need to ensure that board positions are elected yearly. I mean, I have a question of how many years we've gone without electing board positions. It seems to be without meeting minutes. I can't make that decision, but I'm a little concerned if it's been 15 years since we elected board positions that doesn't speak well for the board. We need to ensure that meetings are held at least monthly and that we have proper quorum. We need to make sure that we ensure regular quarterly reports are distributed to the LDFA board and city council. And then globally, we need to ensure that board members have a copy of the bylaws and they read them annually. And those are all now part of our compliance checklist. The fourth thing we need to do is we need to be compliant to LDFA sections on the Cadillac website. The Cadillac website specifically states that the board meets as necessary determined by the chairperson. If we were reviewing our online internet, we were reviewing our website, that wouldn't be there anymore. That needs to be removed. The board doesn't meet as necessary. The board meets per month by the bylaws. There's also the thing about 2 annual meetings for information purposes only. We haven't been doing that. It was stated that the last 6 years we have only done 1. So we need to make sure that we're doing 2 informative meetings per year per the Cadillac website. The fifth thing we can do for accountability is we need to be compliant to accurately update city council. And I'm a little bit concerned about this because during the 31st minute of the March 18th, 2024 city council meeting, they were informed that we're currently doing all quarterly testing during that meeting last year in March. And we found out in the last 2 meetings that we currently have not been doing quarterly testing for the last 3.5 years. So that concerns me. We need to ensure that quarterly regular reports are accurate and presented to the LDFA before information is passed on to City Council. And lastly, number 6, we need to be compliant to accurately posting information for public inspection. And last meeting, the last 2 meetings, we had some nice data talking about well testing data as far as what's going on in the 18 extraction wells. And it was nicely formatted that where we had exceedances from the state level, it was highlighted. If we had exceedances from the federal, the state, or regardless of what it was highlighted. But unfortunately, we went to pass it on for public inspection, and it's posted on the internet. It's posted on our website. It's a completely different format, and now we're using surface water exceedance levels. And I get it. You know, no one's drinking from those 18 extraction wells. But the bottom line is the 3 residents that are drinking from their wells within that area have to meet those criteria. And that's why it was so refreshing to see it presented that way to us board members. But then it's posted in a completely different format of 170 PPT for PFOA. And that's basically saying there's no audit compliance. It's basically saying that we have no issues in the LDFA and there's no PFAS and no one should be concerned. So here's the real problem. Here's the facts. 17 out of the 18 extraction wells tested for PFAS in the LDFA. 7 out of 7 of the monitoring wells tested to have PFAS. That's a total of 24 out of 25 wells that have PFAS. So I don't appreciate when we're presented in one fashion and then it's presented to the public for public inspection in a different format. Because that, to me, is downplaying the whole premise of PFAS in the LDFA. So, Brad, accountability is the most important thing to me. And I planned on sharing some of these thoughts during our committee comments, but I just wanted to speak to you individually. I appreciate your efforts. I do sometimes the wording gets a little bit, are we up here physically poisoning people in the community? But maybe you're trying to portray the fact that the way the facts were presented in the past, or the way that we followed compliance issues in the past, that maybe information wasn't presented to the community in a timely fashion so that their families would be aware that there was a concern when they're drinking their water. So I think we need to work as a team going forward, like Brian's saying, and try to work together to establish a better process. And that's all I have for comments. Does anybody else have comments?
Sure. So we spent 20 minutes the first part of this board meeting. We just spent another 25 minutes at the end of the board meeting. The last 2-minute packets that we just spent a hellacious amount of time. And this room is full of incredibly intelligent people. So where's the solutions? Let's continue to have these resolution letters. Let's continue to sit down and put these maps together. Because there's 45 minutes right there just talking about minutes alone, plus all the time that you spent in the last 2 packets. And you're talking about the past. And we've got a lot of minds in here that are really focused on moving forward and working on solutions. We need to spend our time wisely.
Caitlin, I appreciate you being here today. I don't know your past attendance because I've only been here for 5 months. But I know that there's been many of us on the board that have had 15 or 20 meetings over the course of the month because we care about the community. And I think most of the people here on the board are okay with a 2-hour and 11-minute meeting because we care about the community. And I value your comments, but I do think because this is such a serious situation, I just think it's important that we spend a little extra time short term. I just think it merits that. Okay, so I appreciate you being here today. And that brings us to our final section.
I also have committee comments.
Sure, I'm sorry, Joe.
I would like to say thank you to Carla for reaching out and giving me the information on the USDA. It is hard to find all the different programs, so I really appreciate you taking the extra time and effort to get that to me. Brian, I would like to say thank you for all the time, the phone calls, the meetings that you've done to try to get extra money to help the citizens of Cadillac to get this water in. I've seen the hours, some of the discussions back and forth that we have till sometimes midnight. And I appreciate that. And also Art helping with that.
Well,
so
you're welcome. It is.
you're gonna make a big difference for a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a team. It's an important team.
And my last thing is, I would really like to see a treatment plant day. July, August-ish, if we could set up a Saturday maybe, that the public could come in and me to the treatment center and see what happens there.
Yeah.
I've lived up the road 2 blocks for 51 years, and I don't have a clue what goes on inside that fence.
Are you talking the wastewater plant?
Wastewater or LDFA?
Yes, wastewater treatment plant.
Oh.
We'll work on the LDFA another time, but, just every so often, 5 years or so, just do a treatment plant day, so our citizens can go through and you can show them, here's the different things that we do to help with the contaminants, or.
We always love giving tours. We give them to the school children, and basically anybody that asks, we'll give a tour to.
I missed that day.
So,
So if we could set that up, that'd be great.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Anybody else have committee comments before we move on?
I'm new kid on the block, so I'm still catching up on a lot of this stuff. But I do think, there's a lot of finger pointing at back practices, and I think we need to move on to the future, make as many of the corrections as we can, but there's a time to turn the page also. And we had a committee member make some comments about process, and I think she deserved to be heard and not necessarily responded to.
Anyone else?
I don't know if this is the right time, but I was told that I have the ability to appoint the other person who represents Cadillac by state statute. So I'll be appointing Nate Swiger from this point forward to attend these meetings as representative of CAPS instead of Emily Kearney. I don't know if it needs to be a formal or on the meeting minutes, or if it's just he shows up, but I like to
So
do that.
Is Nate replacing you?
Emily,
Oh, okay.
So that would
So
get us
you're
to
gonna
10.
stay on?
yes,
That would get us to 10.
yes.
I will,
It's just not realistic for Emily and I both to be out of the district at the same time for hours, just for safety alone.
I will verify, may need to be an appointment by the school board,
Okay.
or city council. I'm not sure, but I'll verify and get back before the next meeting.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Jennifer, I don't know him. What position does he have?
He's our director of preventative maintenance for the district, but he's also certified in water testing and does our water testing for the health department. That's regulatory and mandated by the state.
Thank you.
So he has background knowledge, at least.
Sounds like a
to weigh in.
great addition.
Anyone else? Okay, with that, next meeting date and time, does anyone have any suggestions for April? I know long-term we want to get a yearly calendar out, but everyone seems a little busy, so.
if we're looking at the 16th, or around the same period of time, it would be the Wednesday, the 16th. The 12th, I think, is a Saturday, possibly.
Is it possible the week of the 21st at all?
I'm sorry?
Is it possible the week of the 21st, the following week?
Works for me.
You sticking with the Wednesday?
Yeah, that's fine. 23rd.
Same 11 o'clock.
So I've been blocking 2 hours for these meetings. We've gone over every time. Am I safe to block 2 hours? Because
Yeah, it's the same.
I just have to know, because I feel irresponsible walking out of these meetings, but I also have a.
I can do the 23rd,
1:30.
but I do have to leave by 1:45 for another meeting that day.
I have 1:30 that
Probably
day.
in the same situation, 1:30 or so,
I can do, I mean, I can start earlier.
or 12:30.
We can
Yeah.
start at 10 or 10:30.
That works.
10:30 works.
10:30? Okay.
10:30 on the 21st?
Yeah, 23rd.
20.
Did you say 10:30?
23rd.
23rd. Yep.
I do think a lot of our compliance issues, we have it on our action plan for our monthly calendar. I do think we're past a lot of this, so I do hope for shorter meetings, and I apologize for the length of them.
But you also,
No apology necessary. I just want to know for planning purposes.
and I think you also have a suggestion of an update for your April meeting.
Right, but that would mean you'd have to do back-to-back presentations, so I think I'll just take that consideration for a future one.
Okay.
And then we'll try to redo it, because then you'd have to do back-to-back meetings.
I don't think there's.
Oh, you're talking about the informational meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, no problem. I go through these and I'll make sure it's an action item, sir.
So you ready for my motion to adjourn?
I am.
So moved.
Thank you, everybody.
Matt?
Support, we need a vote on it.
Need a roll.
Consensus.
So, we're doing
2019.
10:30
Yes.
on the 23rd?
I get to keep this.
It's gonna go. Can I edit there? Can I make a friend of Robert?
Oh, thank you. Hey, everybody.
You're getting lumped in.
Yeah, would you mind? No.
Liability is from 50. I want to.
Valerie, yeah, could you?
Julie.
Well, I mean, like, yeah. I might keep showing up, hopefully.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey there. Hey, Mr. Marine?
Yeah.
I understand you have a military background? Thank you. You've got a good friend, Major John Turnbull? Well, not a good friend. He serves, thank you. He serves the Otsego County Board of Commissioners.
All right, guys.
And he was on, I don't know if you,
Thank you,
he's a
Owen.
television celebrity. He's on the tunnels to towers. He was,
I'm not, something's not gonna spill out, right? Oh, no?
occupational hazard, Mike. He was on special forces in Syria, he's building schools. Suicide bomber.